There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words, when the heart is overwhelmed and no one around truly sees what you're carrying. You smile on the outside, but inside, you're breaking. You try to stay strong, but the pressure keeps building, and when it becomes too much to hold in, you feel that lump in your throat, those tears threatening to fall. And in that fragile moment, you wonder, where do I go with this pain? That's when God's gentle voice calls to your soul, saying, cry to me. This invitation isn't to embarrass you or expose your weakness. It's to give you a sacred place where your heart is safe. God doesn't ask for perfect words or polished prayers. He wants your truth, your raw honesty, your unfiltered emotion. In a world that often tells you to stay strong and keep it together, God says, you don't have to. Let it out, give it to me. Because when you cry to Him, you're not falling apart. You're falling into peace. There is healing in those tears when they are offered to the one who understands every silent cry, every hidden fear, and every tired heartbeat. You don't have to pretend in front of God. He already knows. He doesn't turn away from your pain. He leans in closer. And in that sacred space of surrender, something powerful happens. The weight you carried alone is lifted. The storm inside begins to settle. You feel seen. You feel held. Peace doesn't always come through answers. Sometimes it comes through presence. And God's presence is always near to the brokenhearted. He doesn't rush your healing. He walks with you through it. Every tear you cry to Him becomes a seed of comfort, trust, and strength. In your weakness, He shows you His strength. In your chaos, He brings you stillness. And in your pain, He pours out His love. So if you're hurting, tired, or simply unsure of what comes next, don't hide your tears. Let them speak. Let them rise to the heavens. Cry to Him, not because you're weak, but because you believe. And in that act of trust, you will find something greater than understanding. You will find peace. The crying to God is a form of surrender, not weakness. In a world that often pressures us to hold everything together, we're taught to hide our emotions, to smile through the pain, and to keep pushing forward even when our soul feels crushed. But true strength is not always in holding on. It's in knowing when to let go. And the most powerful letting go happens when we turn our hearts to God and release what we can no longer carry. When you cry to God, you're not giving up. You're giving in to His care. You're saying, I can't do this alone, and I don't have to. That moment of surrender is deeply sacred. It's when you admit that you're not in control, that life is too heavy, and that your heart needs help. That honesty, that vulnerability is not failure, it's faith. It's the first real step toward healing. God never asks you to be emotionless or perfect before coming to Him. In fact, He honors your tears. He understands that crying isn't a sign of weakness. It's an expression of your deepest truth. And when those tears are turned toward Him, something shifts within you. You begin to release control. You begin to loosen your grip on fear. And you start to discover peace in the presence of the one who truly sees you. This kind of surrender isn't dramatic or loud. It's often quiet, personal, and deeply spiritual. You may be sitting alone in your room, driving in silence, or praying in the dark of night. But in that stillness, as the tears fall, God draws near. He doesn't judge. He doesn't turn away. He gently receives your pain and replaces it with comfort. Not always instantly, but always with purpose. Crying to God means you're not trying to figure everything out alone anymore. It means you trust that even in your confusion and brokenness, He has a plan. You surrender your worry and allow Him to hold what's too heavy for your heart. And in that surrender, a strange, quiet strength begins to rise. A strength that doesn't come from yourself, but from knowing you are no longer alone. Our God welcomes our raw emotions. Unlike the world, which often expects us to present a calm face and suppress our inner struggles, God invites us to come exactly as we are, unfiltered, vulnerable, and real. He does not require us to craft perfect prayers or hide behind polite words. When the heart aches and the soul trembles, He wants us to express that pain honestly. The tears we shed in His presence are not ignored. They are embraced. They become a sacred conversation between a struggling soul and a loving Creator. So many people feel like they need to be strong, even in their relationship with God, thinking that expressing sorrow or frustration is a sign of weak faith. But it's actually the opposite. To cry out to God is to acknowledge His power and His closeness. It is to say, "You are the only one who can understand me completely." Our most broken moments are not a disappointment to Him, they are an opportunity for intimacy. God doesn't turn away from us when we are angry, afraid, or grieving. He draws nearer, gently reminding us that He is not distant from our emotions, but present within them. It's important to realize that God created the human heart with all its depth, including the ability to feel deeply. Our pain does not surprise Him. Our sadness doesn't push Him away. When we open ourselves in complete honesty, whether with tears, silence, or even anger, we are engaging in one of the most authentic forms of connection with Him. This kind of raw prayer doesn't need fancy words or structure. It only needs truth, your truth. And in response to your truth, God offers peace. Not a peace that demands instant solutions, but one that says, "I am with you in this." He comforts not by removing every burden immediately, but by giving us the strength to endure, the courage to hope, and the assurance that we are never alone. There's healing power in knowing that your most unguarded moments are not rejected, but received with love. So never feel ashamed of your tears before God. Let your heart speak freely. Your emotions are not too much for Him. They are a bridge to Him. And in that emotional surrender, He brings peace deeper than words. When we cry to God, we connect with Him on the most personal level. It's not about formality, memorized prayers, or saying the right words. It's about the honesty of the heart meeting the nearness of the divine. In the moments when language fails and all that remains is a whisper or a tear, God understands perfectly. It is in these raw, silent exchanges that the deepest spiritual connections are formed, not through eloquence, but through truth. Crying to God is not about desperation without direction. It's about choosing to turn your pain toward the one who can transform it. This kind of connection doesn't require a special place or a particular time. Whether you're alone in your room, standing in a crowd, or sitting in the dark with your thoughts, the moment your heart reaches out, God listens. Your whisper matters. Every emotion you feel, whether it's sorrow, confusion, or longing, becomes a part of the intimate bond between you and your Creator. Sometimes we imagine that to connect with God, we must be calm, collected, or even happy. But the truth is, some of the most beautiful moments of connection come when we are at our lowest. That is when the ego fades, the masks come off, and the soul is exposed in its purest form. In that moment of realness, your soul meets God's mercy. No performance, no pretending, just you and Him. And that's more than enough. This connection isn't about changing God, it's about changing us. When we open our hearts to Him, even through tears, we begin to feel lighter. We start to see that we're not alone in our struggle. We're not forgotten. We're being heard, held, and gently healed. Even if nothing around us changes immediately, something within us begins to shift. A calm starts to settle, a quiet strength starts to grow, and we realize that God's presence is more powerful than any chaos we're facing. So don't underestimate those tearful moments of prayer. They're not moments of weakness. They are moments of sacred connection. Every time you cry to God, you're reminding your soul that it's never alone, that it is seen. And in that connection, peace is no longer a distant hope. It becomes your present reality. When you cry to God, you are not speaking into silence. You are being heard. In a world where it often feels like no one truly listens, where your voice can get lost in the noise, God offers something different. He listens, not just to your words, but to the emotions behind them, to the ache in your chest, to the tears you can't explain. His attention is not partial or distracted. It is full, deep, and tender. Every whisper, every sigh, every moment you break down is fully known to Him. Being heard by God is not like talking to people. People can grow tired, impatient, or simply not understand what you're going through. But God's listening is different. It's perfect. He listens not to judge you, but to comfort you, not to fix you with criticism, but to wrap you in compassion. Even when your words are messy, even when you say things out of pain or frustration, God does not turn away. He listens because he loves you. This act of divine listening is healing in itself. Sometimes you may not get the answers you want right away. The circumstances might not change overnight. But when you cry to God and feel heard, something within you shifts. The burden becomes lighter. The confusion becomes quieter. There's a peace in knowing that your pain doesn't go unnoticed, that someone, your creator, is fully aware of it and deeply concerned about your well-being. And it's not just passive listening. God responds, not always with immediate solutions, but with presence, with signs, with small waves of peace that begin to fill your soul. Sometimes it's through a gentle thought, a calming feeling, or a sudden strength you didn't know you had. He lets you know that your cry has reached him, that your voice matters in the heavens. So never doubt the power of opening your heart to God. Even when you feel unheard by the world, you are always heard by him. Your tears are not wasted. They rise, they speak, and he listens, not because he has to, but because you are his, and your pain matters to him. In that moment of divine listening, peace begins its quiet work in your soul. Crying to God helps cleanse the soul from burdens we don't even realize we've been carrying. Sometimes pain hides deep within us, buried under responsibilities, distractions, or the need to be strong. But the moment we turn to God with our tears, something powerful begins to happen. The emotions that once felt locked away begin to rise. The heaviness in our chest begins to lift. Tears become more than sadness. They become a release, a washing away of what our heart was never meant to hold alone. We all experience silent battles, wounds that can't be explained, disappointments we carry without words. But crying to God brings those hidden emotions into the light. It's an act of cleansing, not just emotionally, but spiritually. When we let go in his presence, we allow his peace to replace our stress, his comfort to replace our confusion, and his grace to touch parts of us that we've kept guarded for far too long. This cleansing doesn't mean all the pain disappears instantly, but it softens what once felt sharp. It allows space for healing to begin. Crying to God is like emptying a cup that was overflowing. Only when it's emptied can it be filled with something better. And God doesn't just leave you empty. He fills you with calm, with hope, with a sense that even in your brokenness, you are not lost, you are being renewed. People might not see what you're going through. They might not understand your silence or your sudden tears, but God does, and he invites you to bring every emotion to him, without shame, without fear. Your tears are not signs of defeat, they are steps toward healing. They clear the fog in your heart so you can see again, breathe again, and start walking forward with faith again. So don't underestimate the cleansing power of your cry to God. Let it flow. Let it rise. Because each tear you release is making room for something better. Peace, strength, clarity, and above all, a deeper connection with the one who never lets you carry your pain alone. Crying to God brings about transformation in our hearts. It's not just an act of releasing emotion. It's a pathway to healing, growth, and renewal. When we cry out to God, we are inviting him into the deepest parts of our lives, the parts that need mending, the parts that are broken, tired, or weary. God doesn't just observe our pain, he works through it. He turns our moments of vulnerability into opportunities for spiritual transformation. Crying to God changes us because it shifts our focus. In the midst of sorrow, it's easy to feel consumed by our struggles. But when we direct our pain toward God, we are reminded that we are not helpless. We are not abandoned. He is present and he is working even when we can't see the full picture. That simple act of surrender, to cry, to pour out our hearts, opens the door for God to work in ways we may not fully understand, but will eventually experience. It's through our tears that we often find our greatest growth. There is something about going through hardship with God that teaches us patience, resilience, and trust. When we cry to him, we acknowledge that we can't control everything, and that's okay. It's in our helplessness that we experience God's strength the most. Our hearts, once weighed down with doubt and fear, become softer and more trusting in his plan. In those moments of crying to God, a beautiful transformation begins to take place. The peace we thought was out of reach starts to settle within us. The courage to move forward slowly emerges, and over time, our faith becomes stronger because we learn through experience that God is faithful even when we cannot see the way forward. Through our tears, we find a deeper connection with Him, one that isn't built on perfection, but on trust, surrender, and His unending love. So when you cry to God, know that it is never in vain. It is a moment of transformation, a moment where pain meets purpose, where brokenness meets healing, and where your soul is shaped into something stronger. God doesn't just hear your cry, He uses it to transform your heart, your faith, and your life in ways that will lead you to deeper peace, hope, and strength. Crying to God is not just an expression of sorrow, but an act of trust. It's in those moments of deep vulnerability that we allow God to enter our hearts, transform our pain, and renew our spirits. Each tear we shed is not wasted. It's a part of the process of becoming more aligned with His will and His love. When we surrender our emotions, we surrender control, acknowledging that we are not alone in our struggle. In times of hardship, God doesn't want us to carry our burdens alone. He wants us to bring everything to Him, our fears, our doubts, our anxieties, and our pain. When we cry to Him, we are reminded that He is our refuge and our strength. His presence brings comfort that the world cannot offer, and His healing power mends what has been broken. The beauty of crying to God is that it opens up a space for peace and clarity to enter our hearts. When we express our raw emotions in His presence, we make room for His divine guidance and support. Through our tears, we are being prepared for a new level of strength, resilience, and faith. As we cry out to God, we are also reminded that this pain will not last forever. Just as seasons change, our struggles will pass, and through it all, God remains steadfast. We are not abandoned in our sorrow. Instead, we are being shaped into stronger versions of ourselves, ones who can face the future with renewed hope, faith, and courage. So, let every tear that falls remind you that you are not alone. Crying to God is not a sign of defeat. It is a declaration of trust in the one who loves you deeply and is always ready to comfort and heal. Through your tears, you will find peace, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose.